Good morning. Welcome to the Bryant Park stage. It's lovely to see you this morning. If you're struggling to hear me because there's, let's call it some ambient noise, you might want to scoot up. I'm told it's a little easier to hear farther up. No pressure. I'm not here to judge. My name is Jen Brenneman. I work at MongoDB on the learning and development team. So I am here to introduce my friend and colleague, Chris Sandulow. Fun fact about Chris, he was our very first security hire back in 2013. And he's still here. He's been working with MongoDB for 8 years. There's a 2-stint thing there. And he's helped grow our security team into the team it is today. And this is a thing that is honestly very dear to my heart because I work very much in management and leadership development, and thinking about building strong teams is an important part of the work that my team does. And I'm excited about Chris because, let's be honest, the security landscape has changed significantly in the intervening 10 years. So I think we're going to learn a lot today. So I'm going to hand it over to Chris. Thank you so much for coming. I'll be back at the end if we have any questions. So hang on to your questions and I'll bring you a mic so it's easier to answer them. Okay? Thank you so much. Take it away, Chris.
Great. Thank you, Jen. Hello. Good morning, everyone. My name is Chris Sandulow. As Jen mentioned, I am the Deputy CISO here at MongoDB. In my role, I'm responsible for helping our CISO, Lena Smart, sort of build and scale out our security program. And today I wanted to take some time to talk about our Security Champion program. And really our Security Champion program is a way that we sort of enable and empower a bunch of employees in our company that aren't working in a security organization, but give us a lot of valuable insight and help us make sure we make pragmatic decisions. So we've effectively broken this talk into 3 parts. So first I want to talk a little bit about what a Security Championship program is. Then I want to talk really about some decisions we made about the type of relationships we want to nurture with our employees across the company and sort of reinforce what our security culture is like. And then finally, I'll go into exact details about our Security Championship program, sort of how we've made it work and sort of facilitated that. So first, what is a Security Championships program? Quick show of hands, does anybody know? Has anybody ever heard of an SCP before? Ever heard of Security Championships? Okay, very, very small amount, which is great. Perfect content for this talk. So again, the Security Championship program, what we're trying to do here is really identify folks within the company that have an interest in security or cybersecurity, but are not directly working on that. It's not part of their day job. And what we're trying to do is really empower those employees so that they can sort of be a proxy for our efforts, help scale our program, and probably most importantly, reinforce the cultural aspects that we really want to try to convey across the company. And one of our main goals here is that when we make decisions, that those decisions are well informed and they're pragmatic. We want to make sure that if we're going to make policy decisions or technology decisions, that it makes sense for the people that it will impact. As far as an output from SCP, ultimately what we're looking for is a number of phases here. So first and foremost, we want to educate and make employees aware of what security is and what security means at MongoDB. From an awareness perspective, many folks simply don't understand security. Security, information security, cybersecurity, these terms are kind of nebulous. People don't exactly know what they mean. There may be preconceptions about what it means. And we want to correct that and make sure that if there's any biases there, we can remove those. So simply helping other people understand what we're trying to do and our objective goes a long way for us to be successful in what we're doing. Secondly, we want to educate folks. We want to make people aware of what we're trying to do and work together. And if we're successful in that, we essentially will be facilitating a lot of communication between teams, not only between MongoDB security and others, but amongst each other, and make sure that those teams can work together and share security aspects. And effectively, we're nurturing those relationships. We want to be more informed of what others are doing, and probably most importantly, make sure people are comfortable talking to each other. A large element of this is psychological safety. So again, many folks don't know what security is, and they may be guarded or they may be a bit fearful to talk to security because they don't know what may come of that. And in order for us to be successful, it's absolutely critical that there's an element of psychological safety and people are comfortable talking and working with the security team. If we're successful in those elements, if people are educated and aware and we're facilitating communications, then we will proceed on identifying and mitigating risks. People will come to us and say, something just doesn't look right here. We can look into it collectively together, and that ultimately usually leads to identifying some sort of issue or some sort of gap that we can fix together. And lastly, we help people. We assist in implementation, and those security champions either act as proxies or we do teamwork with them and we help work together to fix issues. And that's the ultimate output that we're looking for from a security championship program. Is again, we want to identify folks that don't directly work in security but have an interest in it, get a time commitment from them, and use that ability to make informed decisions and pragmatic decisions and make sure as we sort of grow our program that we're doing so in a way that makes sense for the business. Fundamentally, again, we're working on establishing relationships with many folks across the company. So I want to take a slight pivot and really focus on the relationship aspects first. So when we were designing our security championship program, we realized what we're actually doing is creating a new security team, something that's different than what we already have. And we put a lot of effort into trying to consider, well, what is that relationship going to look like, and what are important elements of that relationship that we want to make sure our program continually nurtures. So again, a lot of people don't know what security does. People will have preconceptions here. Maybe it's a new employee that's never interfaced with security before. Maybe we have employees that came from other environments where they had bad experiences with security, and a lot of people simply just don't know how to interface with the security team. So as a result, if someone with security in their title emails you or messages you, they may be guarded. They may not know what to expect. They may not want to work with you. And these are the kind of biases and preconceptions that we want to avoid. So it's really important that we consider that, and how can we correct this from a relationship standpoint. So these icons here sort of represent some of the key aspects that we want to make sure we're involved when we're talking about the relationship. So first and foremost, our program is designed about facilitating free and open communication between teams, and again, psychological safety. And an example of how we do this is we often share mistakes, and we make it quite common and normal to share gaps or mistakes or things that went wrong. And when people realize that we're not pointing fingers, we're not issuing blame, we're really focused on learning and developing folks, that creates psychological safety where people are more comfortable coming out and sharing mistakes. Secondly, we like to focus on common goals. And that simply means people need to know, what are we trying to do? We have to share what our goals are, what our vision is, and where we're going. And when that's done, people better understand how we can align and sort of work together. An example here is proof of concepts. Very often when we have a new technology we want to work with or deploy, we will use the champions to help us in that proof of concept and get their feedback. Secondly, we also work with them as focus groups. Sometimes if we have an idea we'd like to pass by them, perhaps a policy decision or something like that, the security champions work very well to give us really actionable feedback from all different aspects of the company, again, to make sure that our decisions are pragmatic. Recognition is really important in the relationship with our champions. So again, we're taking people that don't do this as their core competency. They were not hired at MongoDB to do security work, but we want to recognize that. We want to thank them for their contributions and for what they're doing for us. So we put some effort into different ways we can recognize folks, sometimes conferences, swag, special events, and things like that. And probably another really important aspect here is empathy and respect. I mentioned earlier that people don't understand what security does. It's true as well. To understand what other teams work. So taking the time and to put yourself in other people's shoes and understand their goals and what they're trying to accomplish goes a long way, again, in sort of creating pragmatic decisions. And lastly, there's a lot of regular interactions. We realize the security program, again, it's a relationship with other folks. There has to be some regular amount of interaction between people. So we structured our program to have both a combination of formalized regular meetings as well as a sprinkling of other events that are less formalized that people can join. So now that we've talked about some of the critical attributes about the relationship between the security team and our champions, I want to talk a little bit about MongoDB's SCP program and how we've sort of structured this. So in the next few slides, we'll talk about 4 different areas in detail. First, we'll talk about membership, how we formalize this, and sort of how that works. Next, we'll talk about some of our formal meetings and our less informal meetings. So we have quarterly meetings that are sort of required, and this has high quality content that we've nurtured. And then in between there is sprinkled several less formalized events where people have an option of what they'd like to do. Examples here would be things like training events, exercises, book clubs, and events like this. And finally, we always try to facilitate an ongoing communications. Things like Slack channels, newsletters, or ad hoc communications so people are to talk. We found that it's really, really important to have some level of resource commitment from management. So this is, at its core, is a voluntary program. We try to recognize folks and we ask them for their time, but it goes a long way when we talk to the managers and realize we need a commitment from people that they're going to spend some hours per week working on this. This sort of legitimizes folks and deputizes them as a security advocate. And furthermore, it realizes from a manager's perspective that their employees are going to be working on security as well as their main core competency. So this has been quite successful, and it sounds pretty simple, but just getting a simple manager commitment goes a long way. And again, you are sort of deputizing other folks and really indirectly extending your security network. So if we are successful in making our champions comfortable and working with us, that sort of adds another indirect layer of people that are comfortable talking to them. And what we actually found, and happens quite often, is some people may be uncomfortable coming directly to a security person and saying, hey, here's a problem, but they're far more comfortable talking to someone on their team who's a champion. And this is quite a common thing, where someone, again, notices something that doesn't feel right, they will talk to their champion, and the champion in turn relays the information to the core team, and that leads to a point where we can start researching things and eventually fixing problems. From an events perspective, we've focused our program around at least 4 large quarterly events, sometimes monthly events, and these events are more structured and more formalized, and sort of sprinkled in between all those different events are a number of less formalized events, things that range on a variety of technical expertise and topics. This goes from a spectrum all the way from very technical sort of coding and hacking challenges, all the way to events that require absolutely no prior knowledge of security at all. This was designed this way on purpose because we realized that we want to have people from all different aspects of the company work with us. Some will be very technical and want that content, and other people will not be. And it's really important that everyone feels included and they can participate in part of it. So we think it's really important that there are options for people that want to be part of this program. I want to take a minute and talk about some of the events that we've actually hosted and the type of content that we share with our teams and work on. All these tiles up here are different sort of monthly or quarterly events we've had, and these are all events where we've created content for it, we've selected speakers in advance, we promote these events, and we try to actively get as much participation as we can. We talked quite a bit about a bug bounty program. If you're not familiar, a bug bounty program is the ability for people outside the company to share security information with us, security concerns, so we can recognize them and work with them. This is someone within a security team, this is their day job. This is something they do every single day, but many people simply don't understand that. But the general idea of saying, this is my day job, this is what I do as a security engineer at MongoDB, and sharing that with the rest of your employees goes a long way in helping them understand what our goals are and what the culture is like. We also give events about sharing general awareness. So one of our most popular events is how do you secure your LinkedIn profile? How do you secure your social media accounts? Things that make a lot of sense not only in your professional world, but in your personal life. And people love that because it's applicable in multiple levels. And general awareness around why this is important and how malicious people can use this information against you. We've had events around understanding breaches and how password breaches can affect you. Many people are sort of aware if a breach happens, your password may be out there, but they don't quite understand if you reuse passwords, why is that bad? Or if passwords are reused, how can it be that someone can understand the password from one website to another? So those are really interesting talks because we can go into technical detail, but we can also explain to folks why it makes sense to not do these things. Whenever there's a large conference like DEF CON or Black Hat, we usually have some sort of recap where we could talk about some of the key events from those conferences. We can focus on what's important to the company, educate folks on what has changed, and again, from a recognition standpoint, sometimes we send our champions to these events as well. We have a number of experts within the company that have many, many years of experience in different areas, and we facilitate sort of fireside chats and AMAs. Sometimes that's a really useful event where we simply allow anyone to ask any question of someone and get their thoughts on it. And that's been really helpful, particularly when we have new specialists join the company that work in an area that's sort of unfamiliar to a lot of folks. And we've also had events that focus on current items or current hot topics. So I'd say a notable thing here is about 2 years ago or so, when SolarWinds and Kaseya, sort of the supply chain attacks were quite common. There was a lot of hype around this, and people didn't really understand why does it make sense to attack your sub-processors or your vendors, or why does it make sense to attack components that are in your code. So we spent a lot of time talking about that as events as well and raising awareness amongst our engineers. And also, a lot of these events are informed by our champions themselves. We ask them, we poll them, and we get feedback from our champions, like, what would you want to learn about? What can we tell you about? And that sort of informs these type of events. In addition to those formalized events, some of the less formalized events that we have are CTFs. If you're not familiar, a CTF is a capture the flag event. And this is sort of like a hacking competition. Employees come together in teams, and they work to try to bypass security controls. And it's a really, really fun way to not only sort of test your technical skills and your own capabilities, but come together, build some camaraderie with your teammates, and have some fun. And many times this helps build camaraderie not only between security folks and other engineers in the company, but amongst teams that don't normally talk to each other. And those people get closer together and better understand things. And it's quite rewarding. We've had many instances where our teams got first place in a championship, and they feel quite good about it. And also, we've also had people that are not part of the security team sort of get first place, and this ends up being a great talent pipeline. We can recognize and say, this person that's not a security engineer knows a lot about security. Maybe they'd like to come join us and be a bigger part of the security organization. So another important part of our program is having really great feedback loops. So again, if we were successful on nurturing a good relationship and having psychological safety where people are comfortable working with us, it's a great feedback loop and an area we can get information on a lot of different aspects. So again, your champion will be your proxy. They will feed information to you. We realize that policy updates or technology that the security team may deploy can impact the way our engineers and our employees work. So we want to make sure that when we make those changes, they don't negatively impact any of our employees. And our security champions act as a great focus group for that. If we're truly getting a representative group of all people in the company, we can understand, will this tool negatively impact you? If we deploy this on your laptop, is it going to impact your workflows? If we make this policy change, is it going to prevent you from being able to do your job effectively? And these feedback loops are really, really important to make sure that, again, we're pragmatic in our decisions, and also to reinforce that we're trying to take everyone's thoughts into consideration when we make decisions. And probably it's also worth mentioning that a lot of our champions really help us in investigations. Whenever there is a security concern, we sort of have to look into it in detail, and very often our own staff is not a subject matter expert in all areas. So we've got to work with other folks, and if we're successful in nurturing the relationship and having a feedback loop, those folks will be far easier to work with, and they really will better understand the urgency behind some aspects of doing an investigation. So now we've talked a little bit about what the championship program is. Well, who are our champions? Who comprises this sort of magical cohort of folks that we work with? Well, the answer is it's everybody. Every single person in the company, no matter what your role is, we want to have those people a part of our champions. This will be our engineers. This will be executive assistants, sales folks, people that work in HR and finance. Really, what I like to say is everyone has a different understanding of what the word security means to them. When you say security, it means something to them, and these are all valid. Everyone has their own perspective of what it means, and it's important for us to understand what it means to them. So this important two-way conversation happens. We do monthly and bi-monthly newsletters where we send out information to the whole company, and we often will do a champion spotlight to sort of reinforce this aspect. And again, we've had executive assistants, communication folks, engineers, all part of a program, and we like to highlight their involvement in the program because, again, they all have different perspectives and they all have unique challenges and security concerns from their own perspective. Executive assistants often have access to some very privileged information So we do some very specific training just for them so they know how to handle this information. Globally, MongoDB is a company of about 5,000 people. We have 115 security champions, and we are about 12 different geographical regions across the globe. And this represents 47 different departments in the company. Again, our goal and what we strive for here is to get a group of people that are representative of the entire company. And we continue to expand this as the company grows. From a promotion standpoint, if we want to try to get everyone aware of this, we started with a top-down approach. So we've had our CEO send out communications at company all hands, company-wide emails and things like that to make everyone aware of what we're trying to do and to get more people involved from there. And as I mentioned earlier, we often do things like monthly or bi-monthly newsletters just to continue to raise awareness. From a recognition standpoint, we worked with our design team to create some fun swag or things that are unique to champions. So as part of the program, you get some freebies. We want to recognize the fact that you're doing something a bit above and beyond your normal work. So in addition to things like t-shirts and mugs, we often will sometimes select champions and have them come to conferences with us or work with us on certain projects. So as a takeaway and a quick recap, the Security Championship Program is the ability to recognize those within the company that are not working directly on a security team, but are interested in that area. So we want to recognize those folks, we want to enable them, we want to empower them, and we want to use that relationship to help scale our program and scale our objectives, creating an environment of psychological safety where people are comfortable sharing information about things that may be going wrong or things they're concerned about. This is a voluntary program, but we found that it's really important to have manager commitment to sort of reinforce the fact that this is a legitimized program and it will take some level of resourcing from your employees. And again, it's a really, really great program to get early feedback on technology decisions, policy decisions, beta testing projects, and again, driving pragmatic decisions in what we do. So I want to, while I'm up here talking about this today, the people that actually do all the work here are Amy and Felix. Amy is the director of our strategic operations program, and Felix is an analyst that did the vast majority of the work in designing this program. So I want to recognize and thank both Amy and Felix for their work. With that being said, I'd love to hear any feedback on this. Again, my name is Chris. If I have any questions, I can take them now, or please come see me either now or any other time today. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Chris. Does anyone have any questions for Chris with the couple minutes we have left?
Hi, so how do you ensure that the champions really have enough time to help? We have champions at our company to help with certain things, but a lot of times you contact them and they just, it's a dead end, and they really don't seem to have the time or the resources to say, hey, I have time to spend with you to talk to you about this issue you're having. So
Right.
How do you make sure that they have the time and have also the ability to respond when someone reaches out to them?
Yeah. So the question is, how do you ensure that champions have the time to work with you or the ability to respond? We don't have anything formalized as far as like SLAs or you must respond or things like that. So we didn't find the necessary need to go to that level. But the management commitment has worked to kind of reinforce the fact that, hey, the expectation is you have at least 2 hours a week to dedicate towards this. And the expectation is also that people around you in your near proximity are going to come to you, and you should reach out to us. So again, it's more about creating the cultural expectations around that. It's not formalized to the point where if you don't do this, you'll be in trouble type thing, right? And that has worked quite well. Furthermore, if there is an actual security, something that requires some level of urgency, most of our engineering teams or teams like that have some sort of on-call process or a way to put in a P0 where we can escalate it. But in general, it's come down to the management commitment and understanding that there is some level of hours per week you should be dedicating towards this. Yeah, thank you.
Anyone else?
Hi. Today we are receiving Mongo consulting support, and to get this, is it something an additional support we have to request MongoDB, or just to understand this program?
I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time hearing the question. But
So today we frequently meet MongoDB for consulting support for our products. currently MongoDB is supporting today. And in order to get this data champion governance related support, is that something a new subscription altogether, or we can talk to existing MongoDB team that who is offering support today for us?
Did you hear that, Chris?
It was a little mumbly. Would you?
I think, can you tell me if I'm interpreting this right? I think the question is, do we offer this as a service to customers who use consulting support?
Got it. Okay. Yes. Okay. So, do we offer this as a service? Thank you for the question. No, right now this is an internal program where we're sort of trying to scale out our security initiatives by enabling other employees. But in general, I think the aspects that I talked about today can be applied to other companies as well. So if there's an interest in how you can sort of learn from what we're doing and apply it to your organization, I'd be happy to connect with you offline and we can talk in more detail. Yeah. My email is just chris@mongodb.com. Feel free to reach out. Thank you.
That's what happens when you're the first security hire. You get chris@mongodb.com.
Yeah.
Very good. We have time for one more question.
Hey, so for developers, is there anyone in your organization who changed the career paths from developer and gone into the cybersecurity because of this program?
Yes, actually. So the question is, has anybody changed their career path from something else to security as a result of this? Yes, many have actually. So it's been a really great talent pipeline, again, to recognize folks that have an interest, and many times as they learn more about what we're doing, they decide they want to change their career a little bit. They want to go down a different path. Some of our best employees actually have changed direction for that reason. So from a talent pipeline perspective, it can be really useful. And it's often easier as a manager to do a transfer than to get a new headcount. So if you're trying to build or scale out your program, this can go a long way in sort of helping that as well. Thank you.
All right, Chris has offered to stick around for a few minutes if there are any further questions. Otherwise, I want to give you time to get coffee before the keynote. So go do that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.